Have you ever noticed that two people can face the exact same problem, yet one gives up while the other grows stronger? Success often looks like a series of external wins, but in moments of crisis, the outcome is determined by the specific thoughts a person chooses to repeat. We spend years training for external challenges, yet the steepest mountains we ever climb are the ones we build inside our own minds. To understand how these internal barriers shape our reality, we have to look at the story of a boy named Arav. Arav lived in a peaceful farming village, surrounded by green fields. At 14, he was already known for his kindness and his drive to build a life beyond the village borders. Every morning, he worked the fields before the sun was up. Every evening, he studied by the low light of a lantern, determined to master subjects far beyond his daily chores. But whenever he reached for a new goal, a voice in his head would start talking. It whispered that he lacked the intelligence to succeed and that every attempt would end in failure. Because he heard these whispers every day, they began to feel as real as the tools in his hands. He started to believe that his doubts were simply the truth. He stopped asking questions in class. He stopped volunteering for new tasks. Slowly, he shrank his world to fit the small, safe space his fear allowed him to occupy. One evening, Arav found an old gardener near the riverbank, carefully pulling tiny green sprouts out of the dark soil. Arav watched for a moment, confused. He asked why the man was destroying plants that seemed to be growing perfectly well. The gardener explained these were weeds. Left alone, they spread roots underground, stealing water from the flowers. The human mind works exactly the same way. We have limited mental energy, and positive and negative thoughts constantly compete for that same internal space. If you give your attention to fear and doubt, you are feeding the weeds. Eventually, they become strong enough to choke out your dreams entirely. Arav looked at the piles of uprooted weeds. He realized that the whispers in his head weren't a map of his limitations. They were just invasive growth he had been allowing to stay. The next morning, Arav began the work of tending to his own mind. Every time the thought, "I can't do this," appeared, he consciously replaced it. He would tell himself, "I am still a beginner, and I am learning." At first, the change felt invisible. The old doubts were still loud, and the effort of constantly monitoring his mind felt forced and exhausting. But he kept at it. Day after day, he pulled the weeds of doubt, replacing them with thoughts that gave him room to grow. Slowly, his internal landscape shifted. He became more willing to tackle difficult problems, and he found he no longer wanted to run when things became challenging. People in the village saw a new version of Arav. He was solving problems that used to stop him in his tracks, demonstrating a resilience that came from the work he did when no one was watching. Years later, Arav achieved the goals he once thought were impossible for a boy from a small village. When asked for the secret to his success, he would share the lesson of the gardener: the mind grows exactly what you choose to water. Today, thousands of involuntary thoughts will pass through your mind. Most of them will arrive without your permission. You can't stop a negative thought from appearing at your door, but you can choose which of those visitors you feed and which ones you let starve. By choosing which thoughts to believe, you are choosing the person you will eventually become, because when you control your thoughts, you control your future.